Hello, Saints. I'm looking in the book of Galatians again this week, and I'm here in chapter 3, beginning in verse 19. And I'm going to talk about some verses that are really important within Adventist history and doctrine. You know, and as I studied Adventist history, it wasn't just a sideline to understanding Adventist theology and who we are and God's mission for us, but that our history is closely tied with who we are and what we're preaching, what our message is about, and how we understand things. They're not something separate. They're not just good bedtime stories about who we were. They really help to frame who we are. And so stay with me here and see if you can pick up on this. And I'm going to try to help you. In verse 19, it begins in chapter 3 of Galatians. What purpose then does the law serve? It was added because of transgressions, till the seed should come, to whom the promise was made. And it was appointed through angels by the hand of a mediator. You get that? It says that the law was added because of transgressions. And you might say, well, the law was always. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about when it appeared on Mount Sinai. He's talking about when it came out to show the new nation of Israel, what it was, who God was, and what the covenant contract was. But this law that was added because of transgressions, later on in chapter 3, tells us there, beginning in verse 24, well, let's go back to 23. But before faith came, we were kept under guard by the law, kept for the faith which would afterward be revealed, which was through Jesus. And therefore the law was our tutor, our pedagogos, our teacher. The law was our tutor to bring us to Christ, that we may be justified by faith. But after faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor. For you are all sons of God through faith in Jesus Christ. So, we're no longer under a tutor since Christ had come. Some have tried to say, see, the law was done away with because it's no longer needed now that Christ has come. But yet Adventism has always had a high regard for the law, especially considering that we're Sabbath keepers. So what do you say about that? When you really read here, what Paul's trying to say is he's saying that when God wrote on tables of stone and stuck it in an ark, that was to teach the children of Israel what God expected from you in part of the covenant. And the law was there on the outside. There it is. Do it. And it was like a teacher, a tutor, the pedagogos. This is taken from the old Greek that would be the slave who would take the children to school, who would actually raise the kids like a nanny. But after they come of age to have their inheritance, they no longer need the pedagogos, the tutor, because they're come of age to claim their inheritance. And so he parallels this with the coming of Christ. And with the coming of Christ, we no longer need a tutor, which should be correct. But what we're talking about is this aspect of the law being there on the outside to be over us. We're no longer under it in its rule and condemnation, both rule and condemnation, but under faith in Christ. And that's why we read in Jeremiah 31, verse 31, the new covenant that God will make with Israel, that he hadn't made with the forefathers before, with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This time, he's going to take that covenant, the same covenant, and not put it on stone and bury it in a box, but put it on our hearts. We no longer need the tutor because Christ had come, and now it's written upon our hearts. We've transitioned. We've grown up. We're no longer children. We are heirs to the kingdom. When I was in the old church there at Battle Creek, the second church that they had built, this is the replica or the facsimile of that church, you could say. In there they had behind the pulpit this great big board with the Ten Commandments hand lettered on it. This board is original. It's from that time period. And from what I heard there at the time, it actually hung there. And there it was, when the people were at church and listening and watching a preacher, behind him was the Ten Commandments. There it is, do it. But God says, no longer. No longer, because I've written it upon your heart. How is your relationship with Christ today? How's your courage? Let's know that we've grown up. We're heirs to the kingdom. Let's finish the work. Blessings.